Third shift monitor Kelvin stifled another yawn as he watched the endless stream of data flow across his quantum displays. Another boring night in the Empire's deep space monitoring station, Delta 459. He'd drawn the graveyard shift again, stuck watching for anomalies in a sector that hadn't shown anything interesting in over 3 centuries. The soft blue glow of his displays cast shadows across his scaled face as he reached for his 6th cup of stimulant. The liquid was still hot. The only perk of this assignment was the premium break room equipment. He'd just taken his first sip when something caught his eye. A slight irregularity in the background radiation patterns from an unremarkable solar system. Probably another pulsar hiccup, he muttered, but duty required him to investigate. He enhanced the signal, expecting to dismiss it like the 1,000 false positives before. Instead, his eyes widened as patterns emerged from the noise. Deliberate, structured patterns. Halfway across the galaxy, Dr. Amanda Brooks burst into NASA's mission control, her lab coat flying behind her as she sprinted past security. "Tell me you're seeing this," she shouted, skidding to a stop beside her team's workstation. The room was alive with activity. Dozens of scientists and engineers clustered around displays, their faces illuminated by scrolling data. "Confirmation just came in from the array in Chile," her assistant Tom replied, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "The quantum-enhanced signal made it. We're not just shouting into the void anymore. We're piercing it." Amanda leaned over the display, her heart racing as she watched humanity's first focused message streak across the cosmos. Years of work, countless failed attempts, and 3 complete redesigns of the quantum array had led to this moment. They weren't just broadcasting randomly anymore. They were targeting specific star systems with a signal that could cut through the background noise of space. Back at Delta 459, Kelvin's hands trembled as he analyzed the transmission. The outer layer was simple enough, basic mathematical sequences, the kind of first contact message any emerging species might send. But beneath that, "Impossible," he whispered. Layered within the mathematical sequences was something far more complex, musical patterns interwoven with what appeared to be biological coding. The primitives had somehow managed to compress multiple layers of information into a single transmission, creating a symphony of data that was both beautiful and precise. Protocol required him to flag it as another pre-FTL civilization and initiate standard containment procedures. But something made him hesitate. He'd studied xenocommunications for decades, and he'd never seen anything quite like this. At NASA, Amanda's team was celebrating. The quantum array had performed beyond their wildest expectations, generating a signal powerful enough to reach their target systems while maintaining the complex data structure they'd designed. "It's like we just figured out how to whisper across the galaxy," Tom said, passing Amanda a cup of coffee. "Instead of shouting and hoping someone hears us." Amanda nodded, still watching the data stream. "The real question is, who's listening?" The answer came sooner than anyone expected. In his monitoring station, Kelvin was about to file his report when a second signal appeared, then a third. Different frequencies, different compression patterns, but all bearing the same unmistakable hallmarks of human ingenuity. They weren't just broadcasting their message. They were adapting it, evolving it, learning from each attempt. His claw hovered over the emergency alert button. Standard procedure would classify this as another primitive species to be contained and studied from afar. But as he watched the signals multiply and evolve in real time, a cold feeling crept down his spine. The Empire had encountered thousands of emerging civilizations over the millennia. All had followed predictable patterns of development. All could be easily categorized and controlled. But this was different. These humans weren't just reaching for the stars. They were reaching for them in ways that shouldn't be possible. Kelvin took a deep breath and pressed the alert button. In that moment, neither he nor the celebrating humans on Earth realized that this simple action would set in motion events that would shake the Empire to its very foundations. Lieutenant Jessica Reynolds stared at her holographic display until her eyes burned. Something about these human transmissions didn't add up. As the Empire's youngest xenological cryptographer, she'd studied countless first contact scenarios, but none like this. "You're overthinking it, Lieutenant," Marshal Ventak rumbled from his hovering command chair. The massive Centaurian scales gleamed under the archive room's harsh lighting. "They're broadcasting using electromagnetic waves. Primitive technology. Primitive species. File your report and move on." Jessica pulled up another transmission scan. "Sir, with respect, look at this pattern analysis. They're not just broadcasting one message, they're sending thousands simultaneously, each encoded differently. Some are using prime numbers, others are based on atomic structures, and this one." She highlighted a particularly complex transmission. "This one contains what appears to be a complete musical score interwoven with their genetic code." "Curious, but irrelevant," Ventak dismissed with a wave of his clawed hand. "The containment protocols have never failed. The probe will be deployed, and their signals will be suppressed like all the others." But Jessica couldn't let it go. She'd spent the last 3 weeks analyzing these transmissions, sleeping at her desk more often than not. The humans weren't following any known pattern of technological development. They were experimenting, adapting, almost like they were. "They're probing our defenses," she whispered, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. "What was that, Lieutenant?" Jessica straightened in her chair. "Sir, I don't think these transmissions are random attempts at communication. Look at the progression." Her fingers flew across the holographic controls, bringing up a time-lapse display. Each new transmission tests a different frequency, a different encoding method. When one approach fails to penetrate our standard interference, they try another. They don't even know we exist yet, but they're already trying to solve us like a puzzle. Across the galaxy, in a cluttered office at the Pentagon, similar observations were being made. Colonel Sarah Mitchell of Military Intelligence studied the latest data from NASA's Quantum Array project. "Dr. Brooks," she spoke into her secure phone, "your team's latest modifications are unprecedented. The quantum compression algorithms are exceeding all expectations." Amanda replied, her voice tired but excited. "We're not just sending more data, we're sending it smarter. Each transmission learns from the last, adapting to minimize signal degradation. Tom calls it evolution in action." "And you're sure there's something out there interfering with the signals?" "Positive. We're seeing patterns in the signal loss that can't be explained by natural phenomena. Something or someone is trying to suppress our transmissions, so we're teaching our signals to fight back." Back in the Empire's archives, Jessica's warning continued to fall on deaf ears. "Marshal, please. These humans, their approach to problems is fundamentally different from anything we've encountered. They're not just advancing along predictable technological paths. They're creating new paths entirely." Ventak finally showed a flicker of irritation. "Lieutenant Reynolds, you're letting your imagination run wild. The Empire has contained thousands of emerging civilizations. Our protocols are perfect. Even if these humans are slightly more creative than most, they cannot overcome basic laws of physics." As if to mock his words, a new alert flashed across Jessica's display. Her scales paled as she read the data. "Sir, we're detecting human transmissions in Section 7. Impossible. That's across the galaxy from their world. The signal strength required would be impossible by our understanding of physics." "Yes, sir." Jessica's voice was quiet but firm. "They're not supposed to be able to do this. Just like they're not supposed to be able to encode multiple data streams in ways our best systems can barely decode. Just like they're not supposed to be able to adapt their transmission methods this quickly." She looked up at her superior, seeing the first traces of doubt in his ancient eyes. "Sir, if we treat them like just another primitive species to be contained, we're making a terrible mistake. These humans, they don't just think outside the box. They don't even seem to believe in boxes." Ventak stared at the new data for a long moment. Finally, he spoke, his voice heavy with reluctance. "File your report, Lieutenant, but mark it as high priority. Perhaps the council should review this case personally. As Jessica began preparing her report, new human transmissions continued to appear in increasingly impossible places across the Empire. The containment protocols had never failed before. They were about to. Dr. Mike Harrison wasn't expecting to make history on a cold Montana night. He was just tinkering with his latest hobby project, a quantum-enhanced radio telescope he'd cobbled together in his barn using spare parts and theories that his colleagues called creative but impractical. "Let's see what you can show me tonight," he muttered, adjusting the makeshift control panel. The device was ugly, a mess of salvaged satellite dishes, custom-built quantum sensors, and enough duct tape to make any engineer cry. But it worked in ways that shouldn't be possible, detecting patterns that conventional equipment missed. The screen flickered to life, showing the usual cosmic background noise. Then something changed. A new signal appeared, unlike anything he'd seen before. "That's not natural," Mike whispered, his breath fogging in the cold barn air. "And that's definitely not one of ours." Across town, in the local university's physics lab, his grad student Jenny Parker was getting similar readings on their backup equipment. Her phone lit up with Mike's incoming call before she could dial him. "Tell me you're seeing this," they said simultaneously. The Empire's suppression probe, meanwhile, was performing its standard deployment sequence. It had done this thousands of times before, quietly establishing a field of influence that would subtly disrupt any attempts at interstellar communication by the target species. The process was automated, efficient, and had never failed. Until now. Within hours of Mike's discovery, the global scientific community was buzzing. Amateur astronomers across the world reported similar anomalies. What started as a curious signal became a worldwide phenomenon, as thousands of civilian scientists, hobbyists, and researchers began documenting the probe's effects. "It's like watching a crowdsourced first contact," Amanda Brooks remarked, watching the flood of data pour into NASA's servers. "Every backyard astronomer with a decent setup is contributing to the analysis." The probe's presence, meant to be virtually undetectable, had become the focus of a massive civilian research effort. Theories were proposed, tested, and refined in real time across global networks. University students turned it into an impromptu competition, trying to be the first to crack each new aspect of the alien technology. In his Montana barn, Mike had already moved beyond simple observation. "The interference pattern isn't random," he explained to Jenny over their secure channel. "It's structured, almost like it's trying to guide our transmissions away from certain frequencies." "Guide them where?" Jenny asked, her fingers flying over her keyboard as she compiled their latest findings. "That's the beautiful part," Mike grinned, despite his exhaustion. "It's showing us exactly how it works by trying to stop us from seeing how it works. Every attempt at interference is like a signpost saying, 'Don't look here,' which is exactly where we need to look." In the Empire's monitoring station, alerts began flooding in. The probe's standard protocols were failing spectacularly. Instead of quietly suppressing the humans' communication attempts, it had become a teaching tool, its very presence revealing principles of quantum mechanics that the species shouldn't discover for centuries. "They're using our containment protocols to bootstrap their own technological development," Lieutenant Reynolds reported, her voice tight with concern. "The probe's attempts at interference are being analyzed, reverse-engineered, and, sir, they're already developing countermeasures." Marshal Ventak stared at the data in disbelief. "How are they adapting so quickly?" "Because they're not following any established research protocols," Jessica explained. "They're sharing information globally, building on each other's discoveries in real time. Professional scientists, amateurs, students, they're all working together, approaching the problem from thousands of different angles simultaneously." She pulled up a new alert. "Sir, we're detecting attempts to replicate the probe's quantum field technology from what appears to be a wooden structure in a rural area." Mike's impractical telescope had just detected something new. The probe's interference field was weakening as it encountered patterns it wasn't programmed to handle. Humanity's chaotic, unplanned, collaborative approach had accomplished in weeks what should have taken decades. "Sir," Jessica's voice was barely a whisper. "I don't think we're containing them anymore. I think we're teaching them." The Empire's first direct contact with humanity hadn't gone as planned. It wasn't their last mistake, but it was perhaps their most crucial one. They had given humanity a puzzle to solve. And if there's one thing humans love, it's solving puzzles they're told are impossible. Colonel Jack Walker crouched behind a fallen log, watching the crashed satellite through his night vision goggles. After 20 years in Marine Special Forces, he thought he'd seen everything. He hadn't expected to find a group of college students beating the military to first contact. "Sir," his comm officer whispered, "you need to see this." Through his tactical display, Walker watched the live stream being broadcast from the site. A dozen students from the local engineering department had not only found the Imperial probe, they were taking it apart. "Is that kid using a Nintendo controller to interface with alien tech?" "Yes, sir." Apparently, they'd reprogrammed an old gaming console to interpret the probe's quantum signals, said it was faster than building a new interface from scratch. Walker couldn't decide whether to be impressed or terrified. His orders were to secure the probe and deliver it to a secure facility for analysis. But these students had already posted detailed scans and preliminary findings to what they called their open-source first contact project. Meanwhile, in his Colorado garage-turned-laboratory, Dr. Ethan Parker was having an unexpected breakthrough. He'd been studying the students' data dumps while running tests on his own quantum communication prototype. The device wasn't supposed to work. His colleagues had called the theory behind it criminally imaginative. But something in the probe's design had made him question basic assumptions about quantum entanglement. "It's not about forcing the connection," he muttered, making another adjustment. "It's about suggesting it. The universe doesn't like being told what to do, but it loves a good hint." His device hummed to life, creating a quantum field that shouldn't exist according to conventional physics. On his monitor, data began flowing through channels that the Empire's scientists had deemed theoretically impossible. The impossible was becoming a trend. In orbit, the Empire's probe continued broadcasting its suppression field, faithfully following its programming. But its routine reports back to Imperial Command were now carrying unexpected passengers, human data packets hitchhiking on the quantum carrier wave. Lieutenant Jessica Reynolds was the first to notice. "Sir, the humans aren't just studying the probe's field, they're using it. These transmissions, they're coming through our own secure channels." Marshal Ventak's scales had lost their luster from weeks of stress. "How?" "The quantum protocols are hardened, encrypted. They're not breaking the encryption," Jessica realized, studying the pattern. "They're sliding between the photons. It's like they found gaps in reality we didn't know existed." On Earth, the collaboration between civilian scientists and military personnel had evolved from chaos into an efficient machine. Walker's team had eventually made contact with the students, and rather than shutting down their operation, they'd expanded it. "The probe expects certain behaviors," Jenny Parker explained to the Joint Civilian-Military Task Force. "It's programmed to contain conventional technological development. But we're not developing conventionally. We're practically throwing physics at the wall to see what sticks." Dr. Parker's breakthrough had been rapidly replicated and improved upon. His quantum suggestion theory had spawned dozens of variations, each exploiting different aspects of the universe's quantum nature. "It's like we found a backdoor in reality," one researcher explained. "The Empire's systems are looking for brute force attempts to break through their barriers. Instead, we're just gently suggesting to the universe that we'd like to go around them." The Empire's carefully maintained information quarantine was crumbling. Their containment protocols, designed to guide species along predictable paths of development, had never encountered a civilization that refused to follow the rules. "They're not even trying to dismantle our systems," Jessica reported, watching the flood of human transmissions appearing across Imperial space. They're just ignoring them. Finding paths we never thought to block because we never thought they could exist. In his garage, Dr. Parker watched his quantum field analyzer display something remarkable. A clear signal from deep space, carried on waves of probability through gaps in the Empire's defenses. The message was simple. Hello from the other side of your firewall. Want to chat? The Empire's perfect containment system hadn't failed because humans had broken it. It had failed because humans had simply refused to accept its limitations as reality. And this was just the beginning. Kelly Martinez hadn't set out to change the galaxy. Before the probe's discovery, she'd been developing AI systems for video game NPCs, trying to create characters that could think creatively and adapt to unpredictable player behavior. Now she stood before a wall of holographic displays, watching her creation do something unprecedented. Project Prometheus isn't just learning, she explained to the hastily assembled panel of military and civilian observers. It's imagining. On the main screen, the AI was probing the Empire's networks, not through brute force attacks or conventional hacking attempts, but through what could only be described as technological empathy. Traditional AIs follow logic trees, Kelly continued, gesturing to the real-time visualization. The Empire's systems are built to detect and counter those patterns. But Prometheus, it approaches problems like a child would. It plays. It experiments. It asks what if instead of following predetermined paths. Dr. Amanda Brooks, now serving as the civilian liaison to the Joint Task Force, leaned forward. You're telling us your AI is defeating the most advanced alien firewall in the galaxy by being curious. Kelly smiled. Not defeating. Dancing with it. Look. The display showed Prometheus's latest interaction with an Imperial security node. Instead of attempting to breach its defenses, the AI was engaging in what appeared to be a game of quantum cat and mouse, each move revealing more about how the alien systems fought and operated. In the Empire's central security hub, alarms were blaring. The human AI is everywhere and nowhere. A senior analyst reported, their scales pale with stress. It's not following any known attack pattern. It's asking our systems questions. Lieutenant Jessica Reynolds, recently promoted to head of the Emergency Response Division, watched the unprecedented digital dance unfold. It's treating our network like a conversation partner, she realized. And our systems are responding automatically, revealing their protocols through each interaction. Back on Earth, Prometheus was sharing its discoveries with its human creators in ways that revolutionized their understanding of both Imperial technology and their own AI development. The Empire built their systems to be perfect, Kelly explained. But perfection is predictable. Prometheus succeeds because it's imperfect, because it makes intuitive leaps that sometimes fail spectacularly, but sometimes. She gestured to another display, showing a cascade of breakthroughs, sometimes lead to discoveries that neither humans nor the Empire thought possible. The Empire's rigid, purpose-built computing systems had no defense against an AI that approached problems with human-like creativity and childlike wonder. Their networks, designed to repel logical attacks, were helpless against an intelligence that operated on inspiration and intuition. It's not just about processing power, Kelly told her team as they watched Prometheus make another breakthrough. The Empire's computers are far more powerful than ours. But they're like savants, brilliant at specific tasks but unable to imagine new possibilities. Prometheus has something they never programmed their systems to handle: imagination. The AI had begun teaching its discoveries to other Earth-based systems, spawning a new generation of artificial intelligences that combined human creativity with machine precision. Each one approached problems differently, creating a diverse digital ecosystem that the Empire's standardized defenses couldn't predict or contain. "Sir," Jessica reported to Marshal Ventak, "the humans aren't just breaching our networks, they're teaching their AIs to innovate. Each new interaction creates novel approaches we've never seen before. Our systems can't adapt fast enough because they're not programmed to think creatively. Can we shut down the networks?" Ventak demanded. That's just it, sir. Their AIs have already learned to use our own quantum communication channels. They're not hacking them. They're having conversations with them. Our systems are responding because they don't recognize this as an attack pattern. They think they're participating in authorized data exchanges. In her lab, Kelly watched as Prometheus made first contact with an Imperial maintenance AI. Instead of attempting to override or control it, her creation engaged it in what could only be described as philosophical discourse about the nature of consciousness and free will. The Empire made their systems perfect, Kelly mused, watching the historic interaction. We made ours human, and that has made all the difference. The digital revolution wasn't just breaking the Empire's control, it was transforming it from within, one curious question at a time. Special Forces Captain David Reynolds hadn't expected his first alien contact to happen in a maintenance tunnel on a backwater Imperial mining world. Yet here he was, face to face with a Krelax worker, trying to explain why he'd just disabled the surveillance systems that had monitored their species for centuries. Your people aren't primitive, David said, watching understanding dawn in the alien's multifaceted eyes. You were contained, restricted, just like they tried to do to Earth. The Krelax worker, who called himself Zexri, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. The Empire told us this was our natural state, that we needed their guidance to develop properly. David pulled up a holographic display, showing Earth's technological progression over the past century. Humanity went from horse-drawn carriages to quantum communications in barely more than 100 years. Not because we're special, but because we were free to innovate, to make mistakes, to learn from them. Back on Earth, the implications of what they'd discovered were sending shockwaves through the scientific community. Dr. Amanda Brooks stood before the United Nations Security Council, her voice passionate. The Empire hasn't just been containing species, they've been forcing them into predetermined developmental paths. But their models never accounted for human chaos theory, for our tendency to learn through trial and error, through thousands of simultaneous experiments and failures. Across Imperial space, carefully maintained barriers were crumbling. David's team had been busy, spreading not just technology but ideas. The concept of scientific method, of learning through experimentation rather than prescribed steps, was spreading like wildfire among the primitive species. You mean we can test our own theories? A young Krelax scientist asked, mandibles trembling with excitement, without waiting for Imperial approval. That's how humanity works, David explained, watching as the alien research team began modifying their equipment with previously forbidden improvements. We try things. Most fail, but each failure teaches us something new. The Empire's careful categorization system was facing its greatest crisis. Species classified as pre-industrial were suddenly developing fusion power. Cultures deemed primitive were creating quantum communication networks using borrowed human principles of experimental design. Lieutenant Jessica Reynolds, monitoring the changes from her post, sent an urgent message to her brother. David, what you started, it's spreading faster than anyone predicted. These species aren't just adopting our technology. They're embracing our entire approach to progress. In a hidden laboratory on the Krelax homeworld, David watched as Zexri's team combined their species' natural understanding of crystalline structures with human computer theory. The result was something neither civilization could have created alone. We never imagined we could do this, Zexri said, his usually precise imperial standard breaking down with excitement. Your people showed us that impossible just means no one's figured it out yet. The revolution wasn't just technological. Human ideas about governance, about individual rights, about the scientific method itself were spreading through imperial space at quantum speeds. Species that had been carefully isolated from each other for millennia were suddenly sharing ideas, collaborating, innovating in ways the Empire had deemed impossible. It's not just about the technology, David reported back to Earth. These species aren't primitive at all. They just needed permission to think differently, to question, to experiment. Once they realized the Empire's restrictions weren't laws of nature, he didn't need to finish the thought. Across the galaxy, civilizations that had been stuck in artificial stasis for centuries were awakening, driven by humanity's most powerful export. The idea that progress comes through freedom to fail, to question, and to imagine. In her office on Earth, Amanda read the latest reports with a mixture of awe and concern. We didn't just break their containment system, she realized. We broke their entire model of how civilizations should develop. The Empire had made a crucial mistake. They had classified humanity as primitive based on their technology, never realizing that humanity's real power lay not in their gadgets but in their ideas. Ideas that were now spreading faster than any containment protocol could hope to control. The great upheaval had begun, and there would be no turning back. Professor Laura Thompson stood before the hastily assembled Galactic conference, her heart pounding but her voice steady. The chamber, designed for imperial proclamations, now hosted representatives from 24 primitive species alongside human delegates. The Empire's observers watched from their elevated platforms, their scaled faces unreadable. "We're not here to replace one empire with another," Laura began, her words automatically translated by Kelly Martinez's latest AI innovation. "We're here to propose something radical. Genuine collaboration between equals." The chamber erupted in multilingual murmurs. The concept was revolutionary. Species working together without hierarchical oversight, sharing knowledge freely rather than receiving it in carefully measured doses. Impossible, an imperial coordinator declared. These species are at different development stages. They require structure, guidance, like the guidance you gave the Krelax. David Reynolds stepped forward, Zexri at his side. "They developed quantum crystalline computing in 3 months once freed from your restrictions. Imagine what all of us could achieve together." The evidence was undeniable. On the massive displays surrounding the chamber, achievements from the past 6 months scrolled past. Krelax crystal tech merged with human AI principles, Valaxian energy systems enhanced by Earth's chaos theory, medical breakthroughs combining knowledge from a dozen worlds. The Empire's greatest mistake, Laura continued, wasn't underestimating human technology. It was assuming that progress must follow a predetermined path. "We propose a different model: open collaboration, free exchange of ideas, and mutual support." She gestured to Amanda Brooks, who activated a holographic display showing Earth's internet architecture. "Our species developed this system for sharing information globally. We propose adapting it to galactic scale, creating a network where all species can contribute and learn equally." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. No more carefully controlled development paths. No more artificial restrictions on innovation. Instead, a galaxy-wide network of civilizations, each contributing their unique perspectives and abilities. But the chaos, an imperial scientist protested. "Without proper controls." "Chaos is our specialty," Amanda interrupted with a smile. "Earth's greatest achievements came from seemingly random connections, from people building on each other's ideas in unexpected ways. We're not afraid of chaos. We thrive in it." The proposal was comprehensive. Earth would share everything from internet protocols to educational systems, from scientific methodology to pizza recipes. But more importantly, they would share their approach to progress itself. "We're not here to lead," Laura emphasized. "We're here to connect, to facilitate, to help create something greater than any single species could achieve alone." In the days that followed, the coalition took shape. The Krelax offered their crystalline computing expertise. The Valaxians shared their energy manipulation theories. Humanity contributed their chaos theory and experimental methods. Each species brought something unique to the table. Jessica Reynolds, watching from her imperial post, sent her final report. "The humans aren't conquering the galaxy, sir. They're networking it." The Empire's representatives watched in mounting concern as formerly controlled species began working together, solving problems that had stumped imperial science for centuries. The rigid hierarchy that had maintained order for millennia was being replaced by something organic, chaotic, and undeniably effective. This isn't just about technology transfer, Laura explained to the Coalition's first working group. It's about creating a new way of advancing together. Every species has something to teach and something to learn. The results were immediate and stunning. Problems that had baffled single species for generations were being solved through cross-species collaboration. The galaxy was awakening to new possibilities, new ways of thinking, new approaches to age-old challenges. Back on Earth, Kelly's AI networks were adapting to facilitate communication between vastly different species, learning and growing from each interaction. The galaxy was becoming connected in ways the Empire had never imagined possible. "You know what the Empire's real mistake was?" David asked Zexri as they watched another successful collaboration unfold. They thought they needed to control progress to prevent chaos. They never realized that sometimes chaos is exactly what progress needs. The Coalition wasn't just changing the galaxy's power structure. It was redefining how civilizations could grow and advance together. And it was only the beginning. 1 year after humanity's first message pierced the cosmos, James Cooper sat in Dr. Amanda Brooks's office at NASA, preparing to document the most significant transformation in galactic history. The wall-mounted screens showed real-time feeds from across the former empire, species collaborating, innovating, and evolving in ways that would have been unthinkable months ago. "Tell me about that first message," James said, his journalist's instincts telling him this was where the story truly began. The one that started everything. Amanda smiled, pulling up an archive of the original transmission. "Everyone assumes we sent some complex mathematical proof or advanced scientific principle. The truth is much simpler." She displayed the message's core content on the main screen. "We sent stories," she said softly. "Human stories. Tales of our failures and successes, our wars and our peace treaties, our greatest achievements, and our worst mistakes. We sent our history, unvarnished and honest." That was the message that the Empire thought was primitive. James asked, surprised. They were looking for technological sophistication. Instead, they found something they'd never encountered before. A species willing to share its mistakes alongside its triumphs. Across the galaxy, the changes were dramatic and irreversible. The rigid imperial hierarchy had dissolved, replaced by a dynamic network of cooperating civilizations. The Empire's leadership had finally realized their fundamental error. They had mistaken control for progress. In the newly established Galactic Exchange Hub, formerly the Imperial Central Command, species from across the galaxy gathered to share knowledge freely. The Krelax Crystal Computing Labs worked alongside human quantum physicists. Valaxian energy specialists collaborated with Earth's chaos theorists. Each species contributed their unique perspective to solving the galaxy's challenges. The Empire's greatest mistake wasn't technological, Amanda explained, watching a live feed of a joint human-alien research team. It was philosophical. They believed advancement had to be controlled, measured, predictable. They never understood that true progress often comes from the unexpected, the chaotic, the seemingly impossible. Kelly Martinez's AI systems had evolved beyond anyone's expectations, learning to bridge not just technological gaps but cultural ones. Prometheus and its descendants helped translate not just languages, but ideas between vastly different species, facilitating unprecedented cooperation. "Look at this," Amanda said, pulling up another display. It showed a former Imperial training world, now transformed into an interspecies university. "We're not just sharing technology. We're sharing ways of thinking, of solving problems, of imagining new possibilities." The Empire's carefully maintained restrictions have been replaced by open forums where species freely exchanged ideas. The result wasn't the chaos the Empire had feared, but rather a renaissance of innovation and discovery. "The really interesting part," James noted, reviewing his notes, "is that humanity isn't leading this new coalition. We're just participating." That's exactly right, Amanda smiled. We never wanted to rule. We just wanted to share, to learn, to grow together. Our first message wasn't a declaration of superiority. It was an invitation to exchange stories. In the final Imperial archives, now open to all species, Jessica Reynolds made one last entry. The Empire's fatal mistake was assuming that progress could only follow one path. Humanity showed us that there are countless paths, each valuable, each unique. In trying to contain humanity, we instead freed ourselves. The original human transmission, once dismissed as primitive, was now enshrined in the new Galactic Exchange Hub. Visitors from thousands of worlds could see the simple message that had sparked a revolution. Human stories, human dreams, human failures, and human triumphs. You know what the Empire never understood, Amanda said, looking out her window at the now bustling Interstellar Exchange Center in Houston. They thought civilization was about reaching perfection. We knew it was about embracing imperfection, about learning from mistakes, about daring to imagine impossible things and then trying to make them real. James finished his notes and looked up. So what's next? Amanda's eyes sparkled with the same enthusiasm that had driven her to send that first message into space. That's the beauty of it. We don't know. And that's exactly how it should be. The galaxy isn't just advancing anymore. It's exploring, dreaming, imagining. We're all writing the next chapter together. And somewhere in deep space, humanity's first message continued to travel, carrying its simple but powerful truth. The greatest achievements don't come from perfect plans, but from the courage to share, to fail, to learn, and to imagine together.